Walking through the abandoned halls beneath their graves, the Barrow Wights would await the living, hoping to trap and sacrifice them. Their dark reputation was infamous, and tales of these dreadful creatures even reached the land of the Shire. Who did these ancient bones belong to? What caused them to awaken from the slumber of death? And what powers did they have? Hello friends, it's Carl here, and in today's episode we'll be discussing the Barrow Wights, one of the most horrifying creatures in Tolkien's legendarium. So the Barrow Wights were found in an area called Tyrn Gorthad, also known as the Barrow Downs. This was an ancient place, for the ancestors of the Númenóreans had lived here during the First Age. These men had built many of the mounds that were scattered throughout the hills of the Barrow Downs, and their descendants would also call this place home, for after the fall of Númenor, the Dunedain established the northern kingdom of Arnor, and the Barrow Downs were a part of it. And yet, despite its promising heritage, troubling times awaited this kingdom, for after the death of the 10th king of Arnor, the kingdom fell into civil war, as each of his sons tried to claim the throne. Both the royal family and the kingdom of Arnor were torn asunder, and it was split into 3 separate kingdoms called Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudar, and the Barrow Downs could be found in the land of Cardolan. Less than 500 years later, a new threat would appear, a darker, more powerful one, for the Witch King established the realm of Angmar in the north, and he gathered an army of men, orcs, and other evil creatures. His purpose was to destroy the Dunedain of the north, and the kingdom of Rudar was the first to fall to his might. Arthedain and Cardolan managed to hold off the Witch King's forces for a while, though eventually he broke through, and the kingdom of Cardolan was ravaged. Only a tiny pocket of resistance remained, as some of the Dunedain held out in the Barrow Downs and in the Old Forest, and yet they would not survive for long, for a terrible plague arose from the east and killed off most of Cardolan's population. The Witch King then sent out evil spirits from Angmar to the Barrow Downs to possess the bones of the dead kings and queens, giving them life once more. These were the Barrow Wights, and they would walk through their empty tombs, accompanied by the clinking of golden rings and chains on their bones. No Dunedain were left alive in the land of Cardolan. Perhaps they fled, or perhaps they were slain. It's interesting to wonder why the Witch King sent out these spirits. Was it to clear the land of his enemies, or to ensure that they didn't resettle there? Or perhaps he wanted to desecrate the graves of his enemies. It would seem that with time, these spirits grew dormant, for during the War of the Ring, the Nazgûl were sent out to find the Shire, and the Witch King visited the Barrow Downs and stayed there for a few days, rousing the dead from their sleep. After the Hobbits left the Shire, they journeyed through the Old Forest, and they could see the dark shapes of the Barrow Downs looming to the east. Though they had planned to avoid the Barrow Downs, they got lost in a thick fog that had settled over the lands, and as the night approached, the fog grew thicker, and the air grew colder, and the Hobbits lost one another. Frodo could hear his companions crying out his name, and he ran towards their cries up a steep hill. When he reached the top of the hill, he saw a great barrow beside him, and he cried out to the darkness, "Where are you?" And from beneath the ground, a deep cold voice answered, "Here, I am waiting for you." This was a Barrow Wight, and it seemed to paralyze Frodo and weaken him, for his knees gave way and he fell to the ground, and as he looked up, he saw a tall dark figure lean over him, with 2 pale, cold eyes gleaming. It then grabbed him, with a grip that was stronger and colder than iron, and he lost consciousness. When he awoke, he was surrounded by darkness, but slowly, a pale green light started to grow around him. He saw his companions lying beside him, still unconscious. The Barrow Wights had dressed them up in white robes and surrounded them with many treasures, and they wore crowns, chains, and rings of gold. A sword lay by their side, and shields at their feet, and across their necks lay a blade. Frodo then heard an incantation being sung. Cold be hand, and heart and bone, and cold be sleep under stone. Never more to wake on stony bed, never, till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black wind the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the Dark Lord lifts his hand over dead sea and withered land. The song seemed to paralyze Frodo, and from around the corner, a long arm walked on its fingertips towards the sword that lay on Sam's neck. Frodo couldn't let his companions die, and courage swelled in his heart, and he managed to seize a sword and cut off the hand. A shriek then tore through the silence, and darkness fell once more, and in desperation, Frodo called out to Tom Bombadil. Moments later, Tom broke through the barrow, and a stream of light pierced through the darkness, and the Barrow Wight vanished in the sunlight. Now, I'd like to discuss other parts of the Barrow Wight story and characteristics. I think a good place to start is what type of spirits inhabited the Barrow Wights. So in the world of Middle-earth, evil could not create life, and so these spirits must have come from a natural source, such as the souls of elves and men. According to Tolkien, when an elf dies, his soul is summoned to the halls of Mandos to be judged. Though some spirits, typically those that committed evil deeds during their lifetime, would refuse these summons and remain in Middle-earth. These spirits would be prone to being enslaved by Sauron, and so it's plausible that this type of elven spirits possessed the Barrow Wights. However, I don't think that this is the case. Rather, I think that these spirits were in fact those of men. One of the biggest hints to this is that when Merry woke up, he said he dreamt that the men of Carndum came onto them at night, and that he was slain by a spear in his heart. I doubt that such dreams or knowledge came naturally to the Hobbits. I think it's far more likely that this dream was a memory of one of the spirits of the Barrow Wights. That this spirit had once belonged to a man of Arnor that was slain in battle against the forces of Angmar, and the Witch King imprisoned and enslaved his soul, forcing it to haunt the ancient burial ground of his people. I think it would be a very cruel way to punish those that stood against him, and I doubt that this memory came from the bodies that lay in the Barrow Downs, for their soul had left the world of Arda. More evidence for this can be seen in the way the Barrow Wight song is described, as cold, heartless, and miserable, as if the night fought against the morning that it had lost, or the cold cursing the warmth for which it hungered. To me at least, this sounds very much like the yearning of an enslaved spirit that had lost something, that craved life and freedom and hated its current situation. They also had some magical ability to paralyze their victims, though this could be fought against through strong willpower. It's no coincidence that Frodo was the one to break free, and it appears that this power of theirs was well known and whispered about in stories. It would seem that the Barrow Wights and their spells were weak to sunlight, and we see this on several occasions. Firstly, the Barrow Wights only attacked the Hobbits after the sun had set. Secondly, Tom Bombadil uses sunlight to banish the Barrow Wight, causing it to vanish. And finally, he tells the Hobbits to lay in the sunlight to heal heart and limb. Tom Bombadil also brings out the treasures and jewelry from the barrow, laying them outside in the sunshine, and he said they would lie there, free to all finders, for that way the spell of the barrow would be broken, and no wight could ever come back to it. When one considers certain characteristics of the Barrow Wights, they bear an uncanny resemblance to the Silent Watchers of Minas Morgul. Both of them were possessed by spirits, both had the power to weaken their victims, their weakness to light, and a strong willpower, and both shared a link to the Witch King. If you'd like to learn more about the Silent Watchers, I'll leave a link to one of my videos. Now, some of the mounds at the Barrow Downs were marked with stones pointing upwards, and one such stone was described as being cold, as if the sun had no power to warm it. When Tom Bombadil brings out the treasure from the barrow, he picks a brooch with blue stones for his wife, and he stares at it, as if he recalled some memory. He then says, "Fair was she, who long ago wore this on her shoulder. Goldberry shall wear it now, and we will not forget her." I think it's quite clear that Tom Bombadil knew its original owner, though who she was is a mystery. Perhaps she was related to the last prince of Cardolan, for it is said that the mound in which the hobbits were found had been his grave. I wonder why the Barrow Wights had kidnapped the hobbits. Did they hope to simply sacrifice them? Or was it some horrible ritual that would bind the hobbits to the Barrow Wights in death? I'd also like to hear your thoughts on the type of spirits that possess the Barrow Wights, and if you agree with my assessment. Finally, before ending this video, I'd like to announce that Loot Crate are offering a set of limited edition Lord of the Rings crates. These guys make incredible products, and I'm a huge fan of what they do, and they've been kind enough to offer me a set of these crates. If you're interested, you can use the link in my description to check them out and get a discount on your purchase. I've already received a sweater, which I'll feature in another video, and to put it in Lord of the Rings terms, I think it's really promising, and this is gonna be the one crate to rule them all. Anyway friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you can, leave a like, cause it helps this channel immensely, and subscribe to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.